Sister Margaret walked slowly down the long hallway of St. Catherine's Convent. Her black shoes made soft sounds on the old wooden floor. At 71 years old, she had lived in this place for 47 years. The walls were painted white, and small windows let in gentle morning light. She stopped in front of the common room door. Inside was an old piano. It was brown and made of wood that had turned dark with age. The piano had been there when she first came to the convent as a young woman. Back then, her hair was black, not gray like now. Back then, her hands were smooth, not wrinkled like they were today. Sister Margaret remembered the day she first saw this piano. She was 24 years old and scared. She had just left her family and her old life behind. The Mother Superior at that time was kind. Her name was Sister Agnes. Sister Agnes had smiled when she saw Margaret looking at the piano. "Do you play?" Sister Agnes had asked. Margaret had nodded. She did play. She had been playing piano since she was 5 years old. Her mother had saved money for piano lessons. Margaret was good at it, very good. When she was 18, she won a big competition in her city. People said she could become a famous pianist if she wanted, but Margaret wanted something different. She wanted to serve God. She wanted to help people. She wanted a quiet life away from the noise of the world. So she came to the convent. Sister Agnes let her play the piano every day. Margaret would play after morning prayers. She would play before dinner. Sometimes the other sisters would come and listen. They loved her music. It made them happy during their hard days of work and prayer. For many years, Margaret played almost every day. The piano became her friend. When she was sad, she played sad songs. When she was happy, she played joyful songs. When she missed her family, she played the songs her mother used to love. The piano was old, but it sounded beautiful. Margaret took care of it. She cleaned the keys. She made sure it stayed in tune. She played it gently so it would not break. The other sisters said Margaret and the piano were like old friends who understood each other without words. But 5 years ago, everything changed. Sister Agnes became very sick. She died on a cold winter day. All the sisters cried. Margaret cried too. Sister Agnes had been like a mother to her. A new Mother Superior came to the convent. Her name was Mother Patricia. She was younger than Sister Agnes had been. She was also much stricter. Mother Patricia had new ideas about how the convent should be run. Mother Patricia looked at everything in the convent. She looked at how the sisters spent their time. She looked at what they did each day. She looked at the old piano in the common room. "This piano is a problem," Mother Patricia said one day. "Music takes time away from prayer. Music takes time away from work. Sisters should think about God, not about playing songs." Margaret felt her heart sink when she heard these words. The piano had been part of her life for so long. It was how she talked to God in her own way. When she played, she felt close to heaven. "But Mother," Margaret said quietly, "I have always played piano here." Sister Agnes said it was good for the sisters to hear music. Mother Patricia looked at Margaret with cold eyes. "Sister Agnes is gone now. I am the Mother Superior, and I say no more piano playing. The piano will stay, but no one will touch it. Do you understand?" Margaret nodded, but her heart was breaking. She understood the words, but she did not understand why music was bad. Music had always made her feel closer to God, not farther away. That night, Margaret lay in her small bed and stared at the ceiling. She could not sleep. She kept thinking about the piano. She kept thinking about all the songs she would never play again. Her fingers moved under her blanket as if they were playing invisible keys. The next morning, Margaret walked past the common room. The piano sat there like always. But now it looked different. It looked lonely. It looked like it was waiting for someone who would never come. Days passed, then weeks. Margaret tried to follow Mother Patricia's rule. She tried to focus only on prayer and work. She cleaned the floors. She cooked meals. She tended the small garden behind the convent. But everywhere she went, she heard music in her head. When she swept the floor, her broom moved to the rhythm of a waltz. When she folded clothes, she hummed quietly to herself. When she prayed, the words sounded like song lyrics in her mind. The other sisters noticed that Margaret seemed sad. Sister Mary, who had been Margaret's friend for 20 years, asked her. "What was wrong? I missed the music," Margaret said. "I miss playing piano. My hands feel empty without the keys." Sister Mary nodded. She understood. "We all miss your music too," she said. "The evenings are so quiet now. Sometimes I walk past the common room and I expect to hear you playing, but there is only silence." Margaret looked at her hands. They were old hands now, but they still remembered every song she had ever learned. Her fingers still knew where to find each key. Her muscles still remembered how to make beautiful sounds. Sometimes, late at night, Margaret would sneak down to the common room. She would sit on the piano bench. She would put her hands above the keys, but she would not touch them. She would move her fingers as if she was playing, but no sound would come out. It was like playing a ghost piano. One night Sister Mary found her there. "What are you doing?" Sister Mary whispered. "I am remembering," Margaret said. "I am playing the songs in my mind." Sister Mary sat down next to her on the bench. "Play one for me," she said. "In your mind I will listen with my heart." So Margaret moved her fingers above the keys. She played a song that her mother used to love. A song about hope and love and beautiful things. Sister Mary closed her eyes and smiled. Somehow, even without sound, she could hear the music from that night on. Other sisters would sometimes find Margaret at the piano. They would sit with her. They would watch her silent playing. In their hearts, they could hear the music too, but Margaret's heart grew heavier each day. Music was part of who she was. Without it, she felt like half of herself was missing. She looked at the piano every day and felt like she was looking at a friend she could not talk to. Mother Patricia watched all of this, but she did not change her mind. She believed that music was a distraction. She believed that the sisters should think only about God and their duties. Margaret did not know that soon everything would change. She did not know that her piano playing would be heard around the world. She did not know that her silent sacrifice was about to end in the most beautiful way possible. For now, she just walked past the piano each day, her heart full of unplayed songs. 6 months had passed since Mother Patricia banned piano playing in the convent. Sister Margaret woke up every morning at 5 o'clock, just like she had for 47 years. But now her mornings felt different. Empty. She would dress in her black habit and white head covering. She would wash her face with cold water from the small sink in her room. Then she would walk to the chapel for morning prayers. But on her way, she always stopped outside the common room door. The piano was still there. Margaret could see it through the doorway. Every morning it looked the same. The lid was closed. A thin layer of dust had started to gather on top. Number 1 had touched it for months. Margaret's fingers would twitch when she looked at the piano. It was like her body remembered what it used to do every morning. Her hands wanted to lift the lid. Her fingers wanted to touch the keys. Her heart wanted to hear music again, but she would shake her head and walk away. She had to obey Mother Patricia's rules. During morning prayers, Margaret tried to focus on the words. She tried to think about God and heaven and being good. But sometimes a song would start playing in her head. She would hear a melody that she used to play on the piano. The music was so real in her mind that she almost thought other people could hear it too. After prayers came breakfast. The sisters ate in silence like they always did. But Margaret remembered when she used to play piano after breakfast. The music had made the whole convent feel alive and happy. Now everything felt gray and quiet. Sister Mary sat next to Margaret at the long wooden table. She could see that her friend was sad. Sometimes Sister Mary would gently touch Margaret's hand. It was her way of saying, "I understand. I miss your music too." Other sisters missed the music as well. Sister Catherine, who was 80 years old and had trouble walking, used to love sitting near the piano. Margaret's playing had made her smile even on days when her arthritis hurt badly. Now Sister Catherine just sat in her chair and stared out the window. Sister Joan, who worked in the kitchen, used to hum along with Margaret's playing while she cooked. The melodies had made her work feel easier and more joyful. Now the kitchen was silent except for the sounds of pots and pans. After breakfast, Margaret had her daily work assignments. Some days she cleaned the floors. Some days she worked in the garden. Some days she helped prepare meals. But no matter what she was doing, music played in her head. When she mopped the floor, she found herself moving the mop to the rhythm of a waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The mop became her dancing partner, and the wet floor became her dance floor. When she weeded the garden, she hummed very quietly, so quietly that only she could hear it. The humming made the boring work feel better, but she had to be careful. If Mother Patricia heard her humming, she might get in trouble. One day, while Margaret was hanging laundry on the line outside, she heard something that made her heart jump. Music was coming from somewhere nearby. She stopped hanging sheets and listened carefully. The music was coming from the house next to the convent. Someone was playing piano. Margaret could hear it clearly through the open windows. The person was playing a song by Chopin, one of Margaret's favorite composers. Margaret stood very still and listened. The music was beautiful, but the person playing was not very skilled. They made mistakes. They played some parts too fast and some parts too slow. Margaret found herself wanting to run over and show them the right way to play, but she could not do that. She was a nun. She had to stay in the convent. And besides, she was not allowed to play piano anymore anyway. When the music stopped, Margaret felt empty again. Hearing piano music after so many months had been wonderful and terrible at the same time. Wonderful because she loved music so much. Terrible because it reminded her of what she had lost. That night, Margaret could not sleep. She lay in her narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. The moon was shining through her small window, making patterns of light on the wall. She kept thinking about the piano music she had heard that day. Finally, she got up. She put on her slippers and quietly opened her door. The hallway was dark and silent. All the other sisters were sleeping. Margaret walked slowly toward the common room. She had done this many times over the past 6 months. She would sit at the piano bench and pretend to play, moving her fingers above the keys without touching them, playing silent music that only she could hear, but tonight felt different. Tonight, the longing was stronger than ever. Margaret sat on the piano bench and lifted her hands. She positioned her fingers above the keys, just like always. But this time, she lowered her hands until her fingertips were almost touching the keys. Almost, but not quite. She could feel the coolness of the ivory keys under her fingers. She could smell the old wood of the piano. Everything about it was familiar and dear to her. Very slowly, very gently, Margaret pressed down on middle C. The note rang out clearly in the silent room. It was the first piano sound in the convent for 6 months. Margaret's heart started beating fast. She had broken Mother Patricia's rule. She had touched the piano, but the sound had been so beautiful. Just one note, but it had filled the empty space in her heart for a moment. She quickly lifted her finger. The sound faded away. Margaret looked around to make sure no one had heard. The convent was still silent. Everyone was still sleeping. For the next few minutes, Margaret sat very still. She wanted to play more notes. She wanted to play a whole song. Her fingers were hungry for the keys, but she was also scared. What if Mother Patricia found out? What if she got in serious trouble? Finally, Margaret stood up and walked back to her room. But as she lay in bed, she could still hear that single note echoing in her memory. Middle C, such a simple sound, but it had fed her starving musical soul. The next morning, Margaret woke up feeling different. She felt guilty about touching the piano, but she also felt a tiny bit of joy. She had heard music again, even if it was just one note during morning prayers. Margaret tried to confess her sins silently to God. She asked for forgiveness for disobeying Mother Patricia. But deep in her heart, she was not really sorry. The music had felt too right, too natural, too much like coming home. At breakfast, Sister Mary noticed that Margaret looked a little brighter. "Did you sleep well?" Sister Mary whispered. Margaret nodded. She wanted to tell her friend about the single note she had played, but she was afraid to tell anyone. It would be their secret, hers and the piano's. Days passed. Margaret went back to her normal routine of work and prayer. But now she had a secret hope growing inside her. She had touched the piano once. Maybe someday she could touch it again, she started planning in her mind. Maybe late at night when everyone was sleeping, she could play very quietly. Just a few notes. Just enough to keep the music alive inside her, but Margaret did not know that her longing for music would soon be noticed by someone unexpected. She did not know that change was coming to the convent. She did not know that her years of musical silence were about to end in a way she could never imagine, for now she carried the memory of that single note like a precious treasure, and every night she dreamed of music. It was a Tuesday morning in October when everything changed for Sister Margaret. She was in the kitchen helping Sister Joan prepare lunch when they heard voices outside, loud voices. Different voices than the quiet ones they were used to hearing. In the convent, Sister Joan looked out the kitchen window. "There are people with big cameras outside," she said with surprise. "And the van with words written on the side?" Margaret dried her hands on her apron and looked out the window too. She saw 3 men and 2 women carrying heavy equipment. They had cameras and lights and boxes with wires coming out of them. "What are they doing here?" Margaret asked Dot before Sister Joan could answer. Mother Patricia walked into the kitchen. She looked excited and a little nervous. "Sisters," Mother Patricia said, "we are going to be on television today. These people are making a program about our convent. They want to show the world how we live and work and pray." Margaret felt her stomach flutter with nervousness. Television? She had never been on television before. None of the sisters had. "What do we need to do?" Sister Joan asked. "Just act normal," Mother Patricia said. "Do your regular work. Say your regular prayers. They will film us during our daily activities. This is a good opportunity to show people that our convent does important work helping the poor and sick." The television people came inside. Their leader was a man named David. He was young, maybe 35 years old, with brown hair and kind eyes. He shook hands with Mother Patricia and explained what they wanted to do. "We are making a documentary about religious life in America," David said. "We want to show how different groups of people serve their communities. Your convent has a wonderful reputation for helping people." David and his team spent the morning filming the sisters at work. They filmed Margaret and Sister Joan in the kitchen. They filmed Sister Mary in the garden. They filmed the sisters praying in the chapel. Margaret tried to act normal, but it was hard. The cameras made her nervous. She kept thinking that people all over the country would see her on their television screens. What if she did something embarrassing? After lunch, David and his team walked through the convent to film different rooms. They filmed the dining room where the sisters ate their meals. They filmed the library where they kept their books. They filmed the small medical room where they cared for sick people from the neighborhood. Then they came to the common room. David stopped when he saw the old piano. His eyes lit up with interest. "What a beautiful instrument," he said. "This piano must be very old. Does anyone here play?" Mother Patricia's face became serious. "No," she said quickly. "The sisters do not play piano. We focus on prayer and service. Not on music." But David was not listening to her words. He was looking at the piano with the eye of someone who understood beautiful things. He ran his hand along the smooth wood. He lifted the lid and looked at the keys. "This is a very special piano," David said. "I can tell it is well made and well cared for. It would be wonderful to include some music in our documentary. Music always makes these programs more interesting for viewers." "I told you," Mother Patricia said firmly. "None of our sisters play piano." Margaret stood in the doorway watching this conversation. Her heart was beating fast. She wanted to speak up. She wanted to say, "I play piano. I have played for most of my life." But she did not dare. Mother Patricia would be very angry with her. David seemed disappointed. He took some pictures of the piano with his camera. Then he started to pack up his equipment. "Well," David said, "I think we have enough footage for our documentary. Thank you for letting us film here today." Margaret felt sad as she watched David and his team getting ready to leave. This had been such an interesting day. The most exciting day in the convent for many years. But now it was ending, and everything would go back to being quiet. And the same as always, the team was carrying their heavy boxes toward the front door when David suddenly stopped. He had forgotten something in the common room. He went back to get it. Margaret was still standing near the piano. She did not know why, but she could not make herself leave the room. The piano seemed to be calling to her, especially now that someone had noticed how beautiful it was. David saw her standing there. He saw the way she was looking at the piano. "You love this piano, don't you?" David asked quietly. Margaret looked around to make sure Mother Patricia was not nearby. Then she nodded. "Do you play?" David asked. Margaret's heart started beating so fast she thought he might hear it. She looked toward the door again. Mother Patricia was in the front hallway talking to the other camera people. "Yes," Margaret whispered. "I used to play every day." For many years, David's eyes grew wide. "Would you play something for us now? Just a short piece?" "It would be perfect for our documentary." Margaret felt like her whole body was shaking. "I'm not allowed," she said. "Mother Patricia said no piano playing in the convent." David looked confused. "But why? Music is one of God's greatest gifts. Surely there is nothing wrong with playing piano in a convent." "Mother Patricia thinks music takes time away from prayer," Margaret explained. David was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What if Mother Patricia was not here right now? What if she was busy with something else? Would you play then?" Margaret looked at the piano keys. They seemed to be shining in the afternoon light coming through the window. Her fingers were tingling with the desire to touch them. "I should not," Margaret said. But even as she said the words, she was moving closer to the piano bench. David quietly called to one of his camera people. "Keep the camera rolling," he said softly. "Something special might happen here." Margaret sat down on the piano bench. She had not sat here since that night 6 months ago when she played the single note. The bench felt like an old friend welcoming her home. She lifted the piano lid. The keys looked just as beautiful as she remembered. Black keys and white keys, all waiting for her touch. "What will you play?" David asked quietly. Margaret thought for a moment. What song should she choose? What piece of music would be worthy of this moment? Then she knew. She would play the song that her mother had loved best. A song by Chopin called Nocturne in E-flat major. It was a gentle, beautiful piece that always made people feel peaceful and happy. Margaret placed her hands above the keys. Her heart was pounding. What if she had forgotten how to play after so many months? What if her fingers did not remember? But when she pressed down on the first note, everything came back to her. Her hands remembered exactly where to go. Her fingers remembered how to make the beautiful sounds. The music flowed out of the piano like water flowing from a spring. The song was so beautiful that David stopped breathing for a moment. He had never heard anything so lovely. Margaret's playing was not just good, it was extraordinary. It was the kind of playing that made people cry because it touched their hearts so deeply. Other sisters heard the music and came to see what was happening. Sister Mary came first, then Sister Joan, then Sister Catherine, walking slowly with her. Cain. They all gathered in the doorway and listened with wonder on their faces. Margaret was lost in the music. She had forgotten about the cameras. She had forgotten about Mother Patricia's rules. She had forgotten about everything except the joy of playing piano again. The music filled the common room. It filled the hallway. It filled the whole convent with beauty and love and hope. And then, suddenly, Margaret saw Mother Patricia standing in the doorway. The Mother Superior's face was red with anger. Her eyes were flashing with fury, but Margaret could not stop playing. The music was too strong. The joy was too great. After 6 months of silence, her heart was singing again through her fingers. Sister Margaret's fingers moved across the piano keys like they had never stopped playing. 6 months of silence melted away as Chopin's beautiful nocturne filled the common room. Every note was perfect. Every phrase sang with emotion that had been locked away too long. Margaret's eyes were closed. Tears ran down her wrinkled cheeks, but she did not stop playing. This music was her prayer. This music was her soul speaking to God in the only language that felt true to her. Mother Patricia stood in the doorway with her mouth open. She had never heard Margaret play before. During all the years since Mother Patricia had arrived at the convent, the piano had been silent. She had no idea that Margaret could create such incredible beauty. David, the television director, was filming everything. His camera captured every moment of this extraordinary scene. He knew he was witnessing something special, something that would touch the hearts of everyone who saw it. The other sisters stood perfectly still. Sister Mary had tears in her eyes. Sister Joan was smiling the biggest smile anyone had seen from her in months. Sister Catherine, despite her arthritis pain, had straightened up and was listening with her whole heart. Margaret played the entire nocturne from beginning to end. When the last note faded away, the room was completely silent. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. The beauty of the music seemed to hang in the air like a blessing. Finally, Margaret opened her eyes. She saw Mother Patricia. Standing there, she saw the anger on Mother Patricia's face. She saw the camera pointed at her. Suddenly, she realized what she had done. "I'm sorry," Margaret said quietly. Her voice was shaking. "I know I disobeyed you. I know I broke the rules." But Mother Patricia did not speak right away. She was looking at Margaret with confusion and surprise. She had expected to find a sister fooling around with the piano. Instead, she had heard music that was more beautiful than anything she had ever experienced. David stepped forward. "Mother Patricia," he said, "that was the most incredible piano playing I have ever heard. Sister Margaret is not just good at piano. She's a true artist. She has a gift from God." Mother Patricia looked at David, then she looked at Margaret. Then she looked at all the other sisters who were still standing in the doorway with wonder on their faces. "Sister Margaret," Mother Patricia said slowly, "where did you learn to play like that?" Margaret wiped the tears from her cheeks. "I have been playing since I was a child, Mother. My mother saved money for lessons. I studied for many years before I came to the convent." "But I had no idea you could play so beautifully," Mother Patricia said. "Why did you never tell me?" "You said music was a distraction from God," Margaret replied. "You said we should not spend time on such things." Mother Patricia was quiet for a long moment. She walked over to the piano and looked at the keys that Margaret had just touched with such skill and love. "Play something else," Mother Patricia said suddenly. Everyone in the room was surprised. Margaret looked up with confusion. "Mother?" "Play another song," Mother Patricia repeated. "I want to hear more." Margaret's hands were still shaking, but she placed them on the keys again. This time she played a hymn that the sisters sang in chapel every Sunday. But when Margaret played it on the piano, it sounded completely different. It sounded like angels singing. The music was so moving that Sister Catherine began to cry. Sister Mary joined in singing the words very softly. Even Mother Patricia found herself humming along. When the hymn ended, Mother Patricia sat down on a chair near the piano. She looked like she was thinking very hard about something important. "Sister Margaret," she said, "I owe you an apology." Margaret could not believe what she was hearing. Mother Patricia never apologized to anyone. "I thought music was a waste of time," Mother Patricia continued. "I thought it took your attention away from God, but listening to you play just now, I realize I was wrong. Your music does not take you away from God. Your music brings God into this room." David was still filming all of this. He could hardly believe what was happening. This story was turning out to be much more interesting than he had expected. "Mother Patricia," David said, "would it be all right if we included Sister Margaret's piano playing in our documentary? People need to hear this music. The world needs to know about her incredible talent." Mother Patricia looked at Margaret. "What do you think, sister? Would you like people to hear your music?" Margaret felt like she was in a dream. A few minutes ago, she thought she was going to be in terrible trouble. Now, Mother Patricia was asking if she wanted to share her music with the world. "I would be honored," Margaret said quietly. "Music has always been my way of praising God. If other people can find joy in it too, then I am happy to share it." "Then it is settled," Mother Patricia said. Mr. David, you may include Sister Margaret's piano playing in your television program. David smiled widely. This is going to be the best part of our documentary, he said. Sister Margaret, would you mind playing one more song for us? Something that shows off your skill? Margaret thought for a moment. Then she began to play a piece by Mozart. Her fingers danced across the keys with incredible speed and precision. The music was cheerful and complex and absolutely beautiful. All the sisters gathered closer to the piano. They had never heard music like this before. Margaret's playing was better than anything they had heard on the radio or in church. It was like having a professional concert right in their own convent. When Margaret finished the Mozart piece, everyone clapped. Even Mother Patricia clapped. Margaret blushed and smiled. She had not felt this happy in 6 months. Sister Margaret, Mother Patricia said, I have been very unfair to you. I took away something that brings you joy and brings beauty to our community. I was wrong to do that. You were trying to do what you thought was best, Margaret said kindly. Yes, but I was not listening with my heart, Mother Patricia replied. From now on, you may play piano whenever you wish. In fact, I think it would be wonderful if you played for us during our evening prayers. Your music would make our worship even more meaningful. Margaret felt like her heart might burst with happiness. She could play piano again. She could share her music with her sisters. She could praise God in the way that felt most natural to her. David finished filming and began packing up his equipment for the second time that day. But now he was excited about what he had captured on camera. This was not just a story about convent life. This was a story about hidden talent and the power of music and the importance of following your heart. Sister Margaret, David said as he was leaving, I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to want to hear your music after our documentary airs on television. Margaret laughed. I'm just happy to be able to play again, she said. Whatever happens after that is in God's hands. As David and his team drove away, Margaret sat at the piano bench and played one more song. This time it was a song of thanksgiving, a song of joy, a song that celebrated the end of her long musical silence. The other sisters sat around her and listened. For the first time in 6 months, the convent was filled with music again, and everyone agreed that it was the most beautiful sound they had ever heard. 3 weeks after the television crew left St. Catherine's Convent, Sister Margaret had almost forgotten about the cameras and the filming. She was too busy being happy about playing piano again. Every evening after dinner she played hymns while the sisters said their prayers. Every morning after breakfast she played gentle melodies that made everyone smile. The piano was alive again. Margaret cleaned it carefully every day and made sure it stayed in tune. The common room had become the favorite gathering place for all the sisters. Even Sister Catherine, with her painful arthritis, made the effort to come and listen to Margaret play. Mother Patricia had changed too. She often stopped her work to listen when Margaret was playing. Sometimes she would ask Margaret to play specific songs. Her favorite was a piece called Ave Maria that made her think of the Virgin Mary. Life in the convent had become more joyful than it had been in years. The sisters smiled more. They hummed while they worked. Even their prayers seemed more heartfelt when they were accompanied by Margaret's beautiful piano music. But none of them knew what was about to happen. On a Thursday evening in November, Sister Mary came running into the common room where Margaret was practicing. Sister Mary's face was red from excitement and she was breathing hard. Margaret, Sister Mary called out, come quickly. You need to see this. What is wrong? Margaret asked, standing up from the piano bench. Nothing is wrong, Sister Mary said, grabbing Margaret's hand. Something wonderful is happening. Come to Mother Patricia's office. She has a television there. Margaret followed Sister Mary down the hallway, confused about what could be so important. Other sisters were also hurrying toward Mother Patricia's office. Everyone seemed excited about something. When Margaret reached the office, she saw Mother Patricia standing in front of a small television set. All the other sisters were crowded around, trying to see the screen. What is everyone looking at? Margaret asked. Mother Patricia turned around with a huge smile on her face. Margaret, dear sister, you are on television. The documentary about our convent is being shown right now. Margaret felt her heart start beating faster. She had forgotten that David said the program would be on television Sunday. She pushed through the group of sisters to get closer to the screen. On the television, she saw herself sitting at the piano. She was playing the Chopin Nocturne, the same piece she had played when Mother Patricia found her with the camera crew. Watching herself on television felt very strange. "Look how beautiful you sound," Sister Joan whispered. "Look how your face glows when you play." Margaret watched in amazement as the documentary showed her story. The narrator explained how she had been forbidden to play piano and how the television crew had discovered her incredible talent by accident. The program showed Mother Patricia changing her mind and allowing music back into the convent. When the television segment ended, Mother Patricia turned off the set. All the sisters were smiling and talking excitedly. "You are famous now, Margaret," Sister Catherine said with a laugh, but Margaret did not feel famous. She just felt grateful that she could play piano again. However, over the next few days, strange things started happening at the convent. The telephone rang much more often than usual. People were calling to ask about Sister Margaret and her piano playing. Letters arrived in the mail. Lots of letters. More letters than the convent usually received in a whole month. All of them were addressed to Sister Margaret. Mother Patricia brought a big box of letters to Margaret's room. "These are all for you," she said. "People from all over the country saw you on television. They want to tell you how much they loved your music." Margaret opened letter after letter with amazement. A woman from Texas wrote, "Your piano playing made me cry tears of joy. I have not heard anything so beautiful in years." A man from New York wrote, "I am 80 years old and I have been sad since my wife died. But hearing your music gave me hope again." There were letters from musicians who wanted to meet Margaret. There were letters from music schools that wanted to give her awards. There were letters from recording companies that wanted to make albums of her piano playing. One letter was from a famous concert hall in Chicago. They invited Margaret to come and play a concert for thousands of people. They offered to pay her a lot of money. Margaret showed this letter to Mother Patricia. "What should I do?" she asked. Mother Patricia thought carefully before answering. "That is your decision to make, Margaret. But remember, you are a nun. Your life is here in the convent, serving God and helping people." "I know," Margaret said. "I do not want to leave the convent. This is my home. But maybe there is a way to share my music without leaving." More letters kept coming. Newspapers wanted to write stories about Margaret. Radio stations wanted to interview her. Television shows wanted her to appear as a guest. The most surprising letter came from the Vatican in Rome. The Pope himself had heard about Sister Margaret. He sent a letter saying that her music was a beautiful gift from God and that she should continue to share it with the world. After reading the Pope's letter, Mother Patricia called all the sisters together for a special meeting. "Sisters," Mother Patricia said, "our own Sister Margaret has received a great honor. People around the world have heard her music and been touched by it. We need to decide how to handle this situation." "What do you mean?" Sister Mary asked. "Many people want Sister Margaret to leave the convent and become a professional musician," Mother Patricia explained. "But I think there might be a better way. What if we invited people to come here to hear her play? What if we had concerts right here in our convent?" The sisters talked about this idea for a long time. Finally, they decided that Mother Patricia was right. They would hold concerts at the convent. People could come and hear Margaret play, and any money they collected could be used to help the poor, people that the convent served. The first concert was held on a Sunday afternoon in December. 50 people came. They sat on folding chairs in the common room and listened while Margaret played for 1 hour. Everyone was amazed by her skill and the beauty of her music. The second concert had 100 people. The third concert had so many people that they had to move it to the chapel, which was larger than the common room. Soon, Sister Margaret's concerts became famous throughout the state. People drove for hours to hear her play. Music critics wrote articles in newspapers saying that she was one of the best pianists they had ever heard. A recording company asked permission to make an album of Margaret's music. All the money from the album sales would go to the convent's charity work. Margaret and Mother Patricia agreed to this. When the album was released, it became very popular. People all over the world bought copies. The money helped the convent expand their work helping poor and sick people in the community. Margaret was invited to play on television shows and at special events. She always said yes, as long as she could return to the convent the same day. She never wanted to be away from her sisters for too long. 1 year after the documentary first aired on television, Margaret received a letter that made her cry happy tears. It was from a young girl named Emma who lived in California. Emma wrote, "Dear Sister Margaret, I saw you playing piano on television. I am 12 years old and I have been taking piano lessons for 3 years. But I wanted to quit because my friends said piano was boring. After I heard your music, I changed my mind. Now I practice every day because I want to play as beautifully as you do someday. Thank you for showing me that music is a gift from God." Margaret showed this letter to Mother Patricia. "This is why I play," Margaret said. "Not for fame or money, but to help people find joy and hope through music." Mother Patricia smiled. "You have taught me something very important, Margaret. I used to think that music was a distraction from God. Now I know that music can be a path to God. Your gift has made our convent a place where people come to find peace and beauty." As Margaret sat at her beloved piano that evening, playing hymns for evening prayers, she thought about her amazing journey. She had gone from being forbidden to play piano to becoming known around the world for her music, but the most important thing had not changed. She was still Sister Margaret. She still lived in the same small room in the convent. She still spent her days praying and working and helping others. The only difference was that now her music was part of that service to God and to the world. Every note she played was a prayer. Every song was a gift of hope to anyone who needed it. Margaret had learned that some gifts are too powerful to hide away. Music, like love, grows stronger when it is shared. And sometimes when we follow our hearts and trust in God, amazing things can happen. The old piano in the common room was no longer silent. It sang every day with the voice of a woman who had waited 47 years to share her true gift with the world. And the world was more beautiful because it could finally hear her song.